6-year-old Estell shared a mysterious bond with Shadow, the raven her father brought home. When tragedy struck and mourners gathered at her funeral, everyone was shocked as the bird appeared unexpectedly, repeatedly landing on her small coffin despite attempts to chase it away. The bird's violent attack on the coffin left everyone frozen in horror. 6-year-old Estell had the most unusual collection of gifts any child could imagine. Her bedroom shelves were lined with peculiar treasures from across the country, all gifts from her father, a long-distance lorry driver who never returned home empty-handed. Among her prized possessions was a music box that played melodies backward, a doll with interchangeable facial expressions, and a miniature carousel crafted from recycled tin cans. But 3 months ago, her father had outdone himself with a gift that would change their lives forever. A young raven with feathers so black they shimmered with hints of blue in the sunlight. Estell's mother was horrified when she saw the bird. She backed away, insisting that ravens were dirty, potentially dangerous, and certainly not appropriate pets for a 6-year-old child. She feared the bird would scratch or peck at their daughter. Yet something remarkable happened as Estell approached the box. The raven, instead of showing fear or aggression, calmly hopped toward her and tilted its head curiously. When Estell extended her small hand, the bird gently rubbed its beak against her fingers. The connection was immediate and undeniable. Estell named the raven Shadow, and from that day forward, they became inseparable companions. Each morning, Shadow would perch on Estell's shoulder during breakfast, patiently waiting for bits of toast. The raven would then follow her to the garden gate when she left for school, perching on a nearby fence post. Most astonishing to the family was how Shadow seemed to know exactly when school ended. Without fail, the bird would return to the garden gate just minutes before Estell rounded the corner of their street. At night, Shadow slept on a special perch that Estell's father had built beside her bed. The neighbors found it strange seeing a little girl with a raven as her constant companion. Some kept their distance, muttering old superstitions about ravens being omens of death. But Estell paid no attention to their whispers. She introduced Shadow to everyone as her best friend, and soon her family adopted the term as well. Even Estell's mother grew fond of the bird, especially after noticing how protective Shadow was of her daughter. For 3 months, their unusual friendship flourished. Estell taught Shadow to retrieve small objects, and the intelligent bird even seemed to understand certain words and phrases. The raven would come when called and retreat when asked for space, displaying a level of understanding that amazed everyone who witnessed it. Then came that fateful Tuesday afternoon. The school day had begun like any other. Estell had waved goodbye to Shadow at the garden gate and skipped off to her first-grade classroom. When the bell rang for recess, Estell joined her classmates on the playground, taking turns on the swings and playing tag. But midway through recess, something went terribly wrong. Estell suddenly stopped running. Her friends watched in confusion as she stood motionless for a moment, her face blank. Then, without warning, she collapsed onto the hard surface of the playground. Her small body lay still as teachers rushed to her side. The school nurse arrived quickly, performing immediate first aid, while another staff member called for an ambulance. Despite their best efforts to stabilize her during the journey, by the time they reached the emergency room, the doctor's expressions were grim. After conducting a series of rapid tests and scans, the medical team delivered the devastating news to Estell's parents. Their daughter had suffered a rare type of stroke, one that occasionally affects even the youngest of children without warning. Despite all medical interventions, they explained, Estell had passed away. At home, Shadow appeared agitated, flying in circles around the house and refusing to settle on its perch. The raven kept flying to the window, looking out as if waiting for Estell to return from school. Overcome with grief and wanting to put the painful event behind them as quickly as possible, Estell's parents arranged for the funeral to be held the very next day. They chose a small white coffin for their daughter and selected a peaceful spot in the local cemetery under a large oak tree. On the morning of the funeral, Estell's father made the decision to leave Shadow at home, securing the bird in Estell's bedroom. Before leaving, he noticed Shadow perched motionless on the windowsill, staring out into the distance with unusual stillness. The cemetery was filled with mourners by mid-morning. Family members, friends, neighbors, and classmates stood around the small coffin draped with white roses. The priest arrived and began the service with words of comfort for the grieving family. Estell's mother sobbed quietly, leaning against her husband, who stood rigid with grief. As the priest spoke, a dark shape appeared in the sky above the cemetery. Shadow descended from the clouds and landed on a nearby tree branch. The raven observed the gathering with unusual attentiveness, its head moving from side to side as if searching for someone. The service continued, with friends and family sharing memories of Estell's short but vibrant life. As the priest began the final blessing, before the coffin would be lowered into the ground, Shadow suddenly swooped down from the tree and landed directly on top of Estell's coffin. The priest paused mid-sentence, startled by the interruption. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Estell's mother burst into fresh tears, while her father stepped forward, waving his hands to shoo away the bird. Shadow flew up a few feet but then immediately returned to the same spot on the coffin. Each time someone approached to remove the raven, the bird would fly up briefly before returning to its position. This pattern repeated several times, causing uncomfortable whispers among the mourners. Estell's father grew increasingly frustrated. When Shadow returned yet again to the coffin after being shooed away for the 5th time, something inside him snapped. He grabbed a fallen branch from the ground and approached the coffin with determination in his eyes. As Shadow perched once more on the white surface, Estell's father swung the branch directly at the bird. The raven, with remarkable reflexes, dodged the blow at the last second. Instead of striking Shadow, the branch came down hard against the coffin lid, which had been secured only temporarily for the viewing. The impact caused the poorly secured lid to shift and then fall open, exposing Estell's pale face to the sunlight. And then it happened, the moment that would forever change everyone present. Estell sneezed. The sound echoed across the suddenly silent cemetery. It was followed by another sneeze, then a small cough. Some of the mourners screamed and ran from the graveside, convinced they were witnessing something supernatural. Others hid behind nearby trees and headstones, watching in horror and fascination. Estell's father stood frozen in shock, the branch still clutched in his hand. But Estell's mother rushed forward to the coffin and embraced her daughter, who was now stirring, her eyes fluttering open as if waking from a deep sleep. Shadow, meanwhile, hopped to the edge of the coffin and made a soft cawing sound, as if satisfied with the outcome of its intervention. In the chaos that followed, Estell was rushed back to the hospital, where a different team of doctors examined her thoroughly. After numerous tests, they discovered that she had been in a deep coma that mimicked death so convincingly that it had fooled the medical team who had pronounced her deceased. After recovering in the hospital for a week, Estell returned home with no memory of her near-burial experience. She was simply happy to be reunited with Shadow, who received special treatment in the household from that day forward. And would you trust an animal's instincts if they seemed to know something that humans couldn't perceive?